Well, thanks everybody for being with us today. We're excited to spend a little bit of time together online. My name is John Bird, and we welcome you to our webinar today, Compliance Made Easy. We're going to talk specifically about the Regulatory Bill of Rights that's recently been passed in the state of Arizona. As we get going, just a couple of basics for how the webinar works, and you've probably done a webinar similar to this. For starters, we've got 60 minutes of time planned here. Hopefully all of you can hear me. You should either be able to hear me through streamed over your computer speakers, or you might have a better connection if you dial in through a conference number. You can do either one of those, but depending on your computers, I'll let you pick. As far as questions and answers, we encourage you to be involved with us in this as best as you can. And that's not going to be audibly. You should be able to hear us, but everyone out there is muted. What you can do, though, is on the GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar function, there is a chat function. And I encourage you to send through a question if you have a question or a comment. We're going to reserve the last 5 minutes for any and all questions and try to cover those. As far as how we'll spend our time today, we've broken our time into 5 main categories. For starters, I'll introduce to you who we are as a company, Paladin Data Systems, and just briefly introduce our product, our software product, which is SMARTGov. Following that, we'll talk just briefly about the Regulatory Bill of Rights. You know, what is it, just on a high level, just to kind of set the table for going a little bit deeper. Then we'll talk with Tracy Ramirez. Tracy's from the town of Florence, and we'll talk specifically about some real-world challenges as well as innovations in, permit processing and managing permits, inspections, and that type of thing. Following Tracy, I'll bring on my colleague Bob Johnston, who is our product manager here at Paladin for SMARTGov. And Bob's specifically going to introduce to you some automation tools that are built into our SMARTGov permit managing system that are specifically designed for regulations such as what you have here in Arizona for managing time frames, submittal requirements in times and duration and that type of thing. And again, we'll try and reserve the last few minutes, 5 minutes or so, for questions and answers. So that's how we'll spend our time today in this 60 minutes. So as far as Paladin Data Systems, we are a software products and development company. We're located in Paulsville, Washington. That's just outside of Seattle, Washington, west of Seattle. You see a photo here of some of our employees. We have about 52 or so employees that do all the things that we do here at Paladin. We do a lot of things with local government. We also do a number of things with the Department of Defense, and we have some contracts with the federal government, with Fish and Wildlife, and so on. But specifically, what we're really here to talk about today is in the context of local government. And that relates to our SMARTGov system. And I'll give you just a very brief introduction to what SMARTGov is. For starters, it's an automation tool. It's a software tool for managing the full life cycle of a permit or a project, code enforcement, plan actions, inspections, licenses, business licenses, and so on. And really our chronology here started back in 2002. Our local county asked us, that's Kitsap County, asked us to build a comprehensive custom solution, which we did. That was in 2002. Some other local jurisdictions in the Washington area kind of liked what was going on there and what we did there, and so they wanted to deploy interlocking software, is what we named that custom project then. And so we deployed it to another 8 jurisdictions by 2005. By 2010, we had a full 23 local jurisdictions that were spread from Washington to Arizona and into California and Idaho as well, Nevada. And so we decided in 2011 to really productize this and roll this across the country. We really felt like we had something special to offer and a little bit unique in what we're doing. We named it SMARTGov, and by the way, we have 4 permitting customers in the state of Arizona, and so we have some experience doing business in the state of Arizona. And by 2012, we actually doubled all of our permitting jurisdictions, representing all 4 major time zones across the continental U.S. And we've heard a number of things. For example, Kitsap County, Washington, that's currently using our SMARTGov system, was able to reduce their average permit processing from 26 days to 14 days. residential permits. And so, you know, metrics like that are really what makes us excited and what we're trying to accomplish. We're currently deploying 4 jurisdictions on SMARTGov as we speak, and we have a number of additional jurisdictions that are coming on board onto the system. And so, with that in mind, I'm happy to introduce my colleague Serenity Lombard. Hi, Serenity.
Hi, John.
And Serenity, you actually, well, I guess we should say it out loud. We're not attorneys.
No, we are not attorneys. we don't claim to be.
We don't even claim to be. But as far as this regulatory Bill of Rights, it's really more than a single bill. It's a couple of bills.
That's correct. SB1598 is the original bill, and that was established in 2011 and is required that all Arizona municipalities establish review timeframes by the end of 2012.
I see. And these review timeframes is specific to what?
Well, the review timeframes are regarding procedures that relate to the issuance of permits and licenses, and the bill is deemed as really a regulatory Bill of Rights for the public in Arizona, and means that local governments in Arizona have had to change their municipal procedures governing applications of permits. And of the changes that the bill put into place, most notably was how permitting timeframes are handled. And really one of the main purposes of the bill was to create a faster and more transparent regulatory process.
I see. Yep. Okay. Well, that sounds all good, but it's not by itself, right? There's another bill then.
That's right. Now, HB 2443 was just passed as an amendment to SB 1598, and that was passed in early 2013. It was a result of several unforeseen issues that arose from the requirements of 1598, and its requirements are going to be effective as of September of this year.
Okay, so basically they're kind of fixing a few small things or what have you.
That's how I see it, yeah.
Okay, what in basic are those amendments?
The main issues that I saw arising from it, one is that it's excluding certain types of permits from the requirements of SB 1598. And those excluded include any permits necessary for the construction or development of a residential lot, a master plan community, or a subdivision. And in addition, HB 2443 is going to prohibit any jurisdiction from encouraging applicants to opt out of the requirements of 1598. Up until this point, jurisdictions have been working with applicants and giving them the option to opt out.
I see. So, I mean, it could be an applicant would choose to waive their right under this bill and proceed with a different business process, but the jurisdiction can't cajole that or encourage that or what have you.
That's correct.
Okay.
A couple other important points that HB 2443 is hitting on is that applicants can now have the ability to go back in voluntarily and modify an application after it's been submitted. And that also gives the jurisdiction permission to request corrections after the initial submission has been made. One final important change, too, is that all jurisdictions are now required by law to post all of the applicable timeframes online.
I see. Interesting. Okay. So with that then, you know, we're not attorneys, but do you recommend any legal resources?
You know, I would recommend jurisdictions' best resource would be their own city or county attorneys if they are available to them. Of course, there's a lot of research that can be done through the internet, and I have found a couple of law firms in Arizona that we have listed on the slide deck for you, and you can always contact us and I can get you their contact information. You might try working with them if you have any questions on the bill. I
see. That sounds great. Okay, well, thanks very much for that. And Tracy, let's see if I can raise you on the phone here. Tracy's with us as a panelist, but Tracy, I think I need you to dial in with a PIN number, and hopefully you're able to do that, and then we'll be able to put you online.
Can you hear me now, John?
I can. Yay. Hi, Tracy.
Yay. Hi, how are you?
Very good. Technology sometimes works in our benefit and sometimes doesn't, but
sometimes doesn't, right?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. I can hear you loud and clear, so I'm happy to say. So, Tracy, what I wanted to bring you on was, for starters, maybe tell us who you are and what you do, where you're from, and so on.
Well, my name's Tracy Ramirez. I'm the permit specialist for the town of Florence, I've been here for approximately almost 3 years. Prior to that, I worked for the city of Chandler, also as a permit tech. And I'm really enjoying this system. It's working fabulous for us.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you've got some good experience at a variety of places. In terms of challenges, I mean, everybody's got them. I mean, managing, I guess for starters, managing the life cycle of a permit with inspections, fees, and all these things, by definition, is very complex. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So how would you quantify some of those challenges, just basic, some of the obvious things, I guess?
But prior to us upgrading to SMARTGov, everything was pretty much put on me. So as far as tracking inspections, review times, everything from every part of the processing phase was handled through me individually. But now with SMARTGov, I'm able to assign it to a plan reviewer or another department. They're accountable for their own reviews, so it shows up on their user to-do list. They have to actually put in their notes. They're responsible for taking care of it, and then of course it'll come back to me to finalize. But it's definitely decreased my time that I'm spending on the system. You know, prior to this, I would go into several applications, you know, Word, Excel, to create different reports, go in different areas, and now everything is combined into SMARTGov. So it's very simple, and it's cut my time probably in half at least.
Yeah, wow, that's great. And then I guess maybe to expand the question is with this, the regulatory bill here, both the Senate bill and the House bill, I would hunch that creates additional stress for somebody like yourself. Is that
It does.
fair?
It creates a lot of stress. There's a lot of forms that had to be created and posted online to make it, you know, accessible to the public. So we are in compliance. But now the review times are easily tracked with SMARTGov. So now we can't say, well, no, I dropped something off here, I dropped something off there. Now there's certain requirements that again are handled through SMARTGov. So the submittals are required. And if they're not checked, then their time doesn't start. Now I have, of course, the 10-day administrative review time to kick it back if it's not submitted. But everything's in there, so there's no, you know, well, this person told me this over here yesterday. It's all right there in black and white, and anybody can go in here and look and see what the issues are.
Yeah, that's great. So you're able to manage. There's a processing clock. We'll probably show that later, but you're able to manage the clock itself and how much time you've spent on something, or if you're waiting on the applicant. All of those things are automated at this point for you.
All of those things, correct. So if one department has completed their review and the other one hasn't, then we know that's where it's being held up at, and then they're held accountable. So it's fabulous.
Yeah, so you're able then to pretty quickly identify. I think you and I were talking a couple days ago, and you said you're able to identify a permit that maybe is lagging in time, or it's getting close to, you know, when it's going to expire or when it needs to be out the door or whatever, but you can identify a permit in that situation pretty easily.
Yes, sir. I can. The thing I like about SMARTGov is I can customize my homepage, or anybody else can customize it to what they want to see or what they need to see. So what I see is going to be substantially different than what, say, a plan reviewer or an inspector is going to look at. And I can set up to flag me when the time frames are coming due, so I know that it's getting close. I can set up those notifications where it's not going to be for everybody.
Sure, sure. That's great. And so if we were to talk about specifically innovations, you know, you've mentioned some already, but some of those would include how you're doing submittals, how you're tracking workflow, I think. And I think also the automatic email notification. We talked about that the other day.
Yes, absolutely.
And maybe describe what that is and how you folks are using it there at Florence.
The email notification? So the email notifications, when I have a complete submittal that comes in the door, I enter all the information into SMARTGov, and then in the workflow when it goes to, say, a building inspector for them to do the plan review, I assign it to that person. They will get an email notification telling them that there's something on their user to-do list that they need to go in and take care of. And so they do. So without them being logged into the system all day long, that helps them, or helps to remind them that there is something that needs to be processed and that they need to take care of. So
that's great. And so, sure. And so that enables your plan reviewers then to know that something's been assigned to them and that they need to go in and review it and either log their hours or mark their notes or whatever they need to do. That email is what lets them know proactively it's time to do something, right?
Correct. Yes. And then they can go in and they learn how to attach their comments. So again, we don't lose a paper trail somewhere that could have possibly been sent a week ago. Everything's attached in the system,
right.
So it's easily accessible.
Right. And now this question might not be fair, and we didn't cover it the other day, but let me just throw it out there. What would you guess, has this helped to streamline the efficiency of your plan reviewers too? Or, are they spending less time? Okay.
I think they are. Sorry, John.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'd rather hear from you than me.
No, I think it does. It does help. It helps streamline again because it's easier to track and we can see where it's at in the process. And I do believe it helps them. And of course, some of no offense, but the old school gentlemen that don't really like computers, it's just a very simple program. It's very easy to manage. It's very simple to understand. So it's nice, and they can pick it up really, really easy.
Sure. No, that's good. And you were, if you don't mind, just briefly describe kind of the deployment process, and the transition process and the /learning curve process for getting up and going on a system like SMARTGov.
I was actually quite surprised with the deployment. It didn't take as long as I thought it was going to take. I anticipated it being more complex than it was. Within a few days, it's pretty simple to pick it up and learn how to get it done. And again, I'm on it all day, every day. The other employees in the department are not on it as frequently as I am. But it's simple enough that I can explain to them how they need to how their stuff needs to be processed, and they pick it up really easy. So I don't have to be in my office 24 hours a day. If I leave, they know how to process stuff. They can, it's very easy for them to go in and kind of take it and just go with it. It's very simple. I was quite surprised. And I've had
that's great.
I have had the opportunity of working with other programs and implementation of a couple others that were extremely difficult. So when we started this, I was anticipating it to be a lot worse than it was.
Sure. No, I appreciate all that. And so, really our objective here with SMARTGov, hence the name, is we're trying to help resource people like yourself and your colleagues there at the town of Florence so that you can do, all the functions of your job, plus layer over top of that regulations such as the Senate bill and the House bill that we're referring to, and still be able to comply with those in a way that doesn't, break your back, so to speak. And so you're able to increase your service levels both to the public and to your applicants and your development community, but all the while you're able to sustain that type of business model in a way that makes sense. And with that, we were talking about results, at the end of the day, and you've already mentioned that your reporting time has gone down quite a bit. If you could just briefly speak to the types of reports that you're doing now. I mean, what's a typical day look like in terms of, hey, I got to get my reports done? What do you go do to make that happen now?
Actually, I send out reports the first of every month. I send out 2 reports, all of the issued permits, and then one with just the SFRs. Before this, every day I would have to go in and log every single permit that I did with several different items depending on there was several different people who wanted to see different things, and I got it broken down into 2 reports, but I would still have to go in and update both of those reports every single day. Now it's a matter of pushing the button on the first of the month. It brings up everything. It brings up both those reports. All the information is there. All the correct information is there. So it lessens the operator error, so to speak.
Sure.
It's much nicer. So the reports are fabulous. I don't have to update those every day at all.
Sure. No, that's great. And what about this? If you all of a sudden need to start tracking a new metric, or if you need to change your report or create just a brand new report that you've never done before, you're able to do that as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. They're customized for the requests that I get, but again, the two that I do every month, they were being sent out a lot more to different people because they wanted different things, but now it's 2 reports and everything's correct because it's pulled directly from the system.
Sure. No, that's great. Tracy, I appreciate your perspective, especially, you know, with your background at a handful of jurisdictions and what you've been doing for some years now, and you've been able to reflect. If you don't mind hanging with us through this, I want to kind of bring my colleague Bob Johnston into the dialogue here. But there might be a question or two as we get going, Tracy, and we might want you to chime in on later on. So thanks very much. So, Bob, we're happy to have you with us today, and you've been with Paladin's permitting effort since the very beginning.
Since the very beginning. I was one of the original designers of the application we built for Kitsap County, and have been kind of you know, spearheading the innovations that we've included into SMARTGov over the last few years.
Yes, indeed. And you know, the thing that I would say at this point, just to launch into a dialogue, is we have observed, we're talking about the Senate bill and the House bill in Arizona, but we have observed an increase in regulatory timeframes, not just in Arizona, not just in Washington State, but in a number of places across the country.
Yeah, and I think that's driven by a number of factors. You know, we're finding that you know, with minimal resources, tight resources, and the downing of the housing market back in 2007, 2008, that the permitting departments of local jurisdictions are getting strained to the utmost, and so that, you know, has a backlash with people who are you know, applying for permits, that they're not getting them as quickly as they need them or want them. And then, you know, going to legislators and so forth to pass laws to ensure that these jurisdictions are executing in a timely fashion. So it's kind of been a round circle about how all this has come. But we're seeing it all over the country. In Washington State, we have rules and regulations around that, and we're seeing them also in Colorado and Missouri and on the East Coast. So, yeah, it's becoming a trend.
And it's not something we anticipate is going to dissolve and go away either.
No, I think it's just going to become more and more, you know, prevalent across the country. And, you know, things like, you know, web publishing and accessing information over the web are becoming the norm and expected. So
yeah.
I think these are things that we are, you know, trends that are moving forward.
So, Bob, with that, I know you've got a couple of slides here. Talk us through, I think we're probably ready for this, talk us through the concept, because you're in charge of keeping the product of SMARTGov in line and in advance of trends that are coming. So launch us into this.
Yeah, so, you know, basically the presentation that I'm going to give you today is, you know, how to use automation and tools to facilitate this whole permit processing, okay? You know, there's certainly other permitting systems out there, and there's certain, you know, things that go on in the software industry. And so, you know, we're not the only software organization that provides this kind of automation. But I want to talk at a very generic level about some of the things that when you're evaluating, looking at software and deciding whether it's going to be able to assist you in processing your permits effectively, things you're going to want to look for in a particular piece of software that are going to facilitate the streamlining of your processes.
And I'll just add to that, Bob, is you're right, a lot of automation our competitors do too, but really specifically what we're going to highlight today is unique to what we're doing as far as we know.
I believe that we are one of the only organizations that actually has this concept of cycling and have implemented it in the software to the extent that we have, and I'm going to try to illustrate some of that today.
Go ahead.
All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start out and to set a little bit of a baseline for us to have these discussions. I've got a couple of slides here I want to just talk about before we actually look at the automated software components. So, you know, let's just talk in a very generic terms of the life cycle of a permit. So, typically the way things go is you get an application, and we consider that, we'll create a record or a case or whatever you want to call it in the system, and we put it into pending status so that, we can then understand that here comes an application. And once we define the type of application that we're receiving, we've predefined a number of time frames and expirations and submittals and workflows that accompany that particular permit type. So those submittals are then, have a list of submittals that are required for the application to be considered complete. And once the application is considered complete, that's when the actual review processes, start happening. So, where we're going to be spending the time in the software today is right in this application complete approved cycle process. And, once it's approved, then of course you pay fees and you issue the permit, and then inspections are done and finalized and closed and those type of things. But where we're going to be talking today is primarily around this application complete and this approval process. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of different ways to do this review cycle, okay, this review processing. In its most complicated form, you would have something that looks like this flow chart, where you have, an application is submitted, the submittals then are brought in. That may happen at the counter at the time that they come in. It may happen over the web, or they may bring this in piecemeal. The sprinkler plan and building plan and structural calculations, bring those in kind of piecemeal. But the process or the permit is not considered technically complete until all the requirements are satisfied. And then the clock starts. The clock starts for our review period. And we've broken this down in this case for a fire planning and engineering, and this is, a particular time period. Well, once in this process, we're considering it a parallel process, but it could be a serial process as well. But at some point, they're going to find that there's deficiencies or discrepancies, and in this case, we've said that the plan is incomplete and the calculations are incorrect. And we'll then send that information back to the applicant and wait for a period of time. The applicant then will respond to the deficiencies. The planning organization will review it again. Maybe the engineering says, oh, we still don't have enough information. It might go for another response and then another cycle. But what we're trying to measure from a time frame perspective on these particular processes are the time that it's in our hands by itself. So time period 2 and time period 4. That's where we want to really measure, and we have to be able to have an accurate way to do that. So the next thing I want to illustrate for you is an example of a jurisdiction in Arizona prior to the second bill coming out. This was their process that they had for SB1598 compliancy. So, the town conducts an administrative completeness review. If it's deemed complete, it goes into the review process. If it's approved, everything's done and the permit is issued. But again, if it's disapproved, the customer has one opportunity to address the comments, and then if those comments are insufficient, then the permit is just denied, and it's gone back in, and they have to reapply and pay new fees and all of that kind of stuff. Well, the town also had an option too, where they decided that if the applicant wants to opt out of that, we will conduct up to 5 plan reviews and continually communicate with the applicant throughout the process. So, this is the way one town in Arizona, put out to process their permits. And, a couple small things have changed with the add-on additional bill. In other words, they can't promote the idea of option 2 and those types of things, but it's still available to them. So, the point that I'm trying to make here is that you may have one or more different ways that you process your permits, and your automation tools should be able to manage either way that you need to process those and be able to configure with that. So that's kind of my lead into all of this, John, and I think at this point, if you'll pass over to me, I'll start doing the demonstration. Do that. And I want to let everybody know I'm not really going to be doing a full demonstration of the software. What I am going to be doing is just showing you some examples of some of the things that we've been discussing. Okay, so what we're talking about right here is what you're seeing right now is the home page of the SMARTGov permitting and code enforcement and licensing system. And I've got it set up for this particular demo in a particular way that I want to, and I've created certain filters to filter out data that I can take a look at. I've got some charts up here that I'm looking at, and we'll eventually get to the user to-do list and the smart queue and the cycle list and some of these other things. But where I really wanted to start, and where everybody really should start, is defining their business processes. So I'm going to go ahead and go into I think I need to change the resolution on my screen here just for a moment. I'm going to go into the permitting setup area, and we're going to look at permit types that we've configured for this application. So in this application, we have configured 120 different business processes, and we have them listed here. And you know, of course, I can filter these by whatever I want to look, and I have one in particular that I've set up for this that I want to take a look at. So it's this single-family residence cycle 2 permit. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up, and you know, just for purposes here, I think I can expand this just a little bit more. Let's go ahead and zoom that up a little bit to here like this so that you can see it a little bit better. But what we're dealing with here is, you know, a building department. We're going to require parcels. We could issue this on the portal. We could accept applications for this over the portal, those types of things. But one of the things I want to point out to you right here is this days to process. This is the standard number of days that our jurisdiction has determined that this particular permit usually takes to process. So when you talk about publishing time frames for your various processes, we provided a place for you to record and work with those number of days. We also have this concept that we're going to be talking about, which is workflow cycling, and this permit is set up to do that, and that we want automatic status changes. So as the permit works through its life cycle, the system will examine the data that's associated to this permit, and it will decide whether it should be moved from pending to complete to approved to issued and so on and so forth. And so by checking this box, we've told it that we want the system to automatically cycle these things. Some of the other important information that we need to configure on each one of these business processes is the expiration rules of the permit. When it's in a pending state, I need to look at the submitted date and calculate out 180 days. When it's in the technically complete stage, I need to look when it was completed and calculate out 180 days. And so these are the things that you set up and define so that the system can keep track of, whether things are expired, when they're expired, and that type of thing. Another list of things that you need to make sure that you're looking for is the list of submittals, and whether those can be uploaded on the web, whether their receipt is required, and whether they're acceptable or not is required. So the whole process of receiving them and then looking at them at a later time and deciding if they're acceptable or not is a process that we support. So in this case, we've said we need an application, a building plan, a site plan, structural calcs, and so on and so forth. And we've given a list here of these things. So this is an important thing that you need to have when they come in and submit for these. In addition to that, we can have set up a number of different workflows. And I'm going to go ahead, just to get a little bit more room on the screen here, I'm going to go ahead and change this again. So we have actually 3 levels of workflow that are important. An administrative workflow, a review workflow, and a final workflow. Administrative does not impact, does not impact the review cycle at all. So these are things like, when you're, can come in and you can look at the task list, and they're going to check, this is your checklist of things that you should be doing, and these are the different statuses that it could be in, and so on and so forth. Well, the thing that you can do is you can calculate due dates by setting in the process duration. You can put in and calculate the due dates. You can even calculate when you want a notification to go out. How many days prior to the due date do you want a notification to go out? And then you can estimate the number of hours that you're going to require to accomplish this task. You can also set up base steps so that the PC file set, well, let's actually go to the review step, where the planning step is, or that the engineering step is not going to even be calculated due date until the plan review step has got a base date associated with it. So in this case, we've given out 15 days each, where we could set up a notification window, say maybe 5 days before it's ready to go. I need a notification, and I can set those up, and I can set whether they're required for approval or whatever here, and base the calculation of the due date based upon technically complete or whatever, and I can create assignments as to, what needs to get accomplished, who needs to accomplish this. So if I come over here, I can see that the planning department is going to be associated to this, and the engineering department is going to be associated to this one, and Jim Thomas is going to be associated to this fire, and either Crew 2 or Willie Burns can accomplish this building approval. Once these reviews are done, you're going to want to set up a process by which you close out the permit. And so you can set those up as well, and these different workflows come into play at different times. So that's kind of as far as I wanted to go with setting up a permit. Certainly you can set up all of these other things, but for the purposes of discussing workflow and statusing, I think that's where I wanted to go with that.
And Bob, I'll just add as you're transitioning that, those tools you just showed is precisely for time requirements like we're talking about in Arizona for each jurisdiction. They all have to create various time frame requirements, but it might be different from one to another.
From one jurisdiction to another, and that's completely configurable and by each jurisdiction to let them go in the way that they need to, put their business processes in place.
Great.
So with that, I'm going to go back and let's take a little bit of look at how some of this information kind of flows through the system. And I've got a number of different permits set up. I've got some that are ready to issue, some that are complete, some that are incomplete, some that have been issued. And I've set these up so that we can kind of see, how the system would look in each of these different statuses. So let's start with an incomplete one. So here is a permit that was submitted on 6/01, has an expiration date of 11/28, but it's incomplete. So let's go take a look at that as why this is incomplete. So by coming here, we can see that the permit is not yet complete, that it was submitted on 6/01, and that there are 4 of 6 submittals received. And so there is no cycle starting on this because it is incomplete, and we haven't really got to a complete status yet. So if I need to, what I would do, I suppose, as a permit technician in this case, is I would probably call the contact, make sure that, get their phone number here and call the contact, and I would then ask them, where are the rest of their submittals, or I'm going to close out this permit. I guess I could wait until 11/28 to close it out, but maybe I'm going to be proactive with that. And they might come in a couple days later, or maybe they come in today and they say, okay, I've brought in the structural calcs and the landscaping plan. And so you check those, and you could change the date on these if you wanted to, but let's just go ahead and leave it the way it is. And what I want you to notice is here we are in an incomplete status, and when I save that, what I'm expecting, and it did, put it into a complete status. So now when I come back to my main screen, I'm going to see that all 6 of my submittals are received, that I have a green check box, that it was completed on 6/26, and that, this is our first day of review. And oh, by the way, I've gotten an email because I've signed up and registered for this email to say that this particular permit has now changed to technically complete and that I'm ready to process it. So once it's technically complete, we see that we have 4 approvals that we need to get accomplished. Now, if I went back to my dashboard, what we're going to see now is we're going to see that that permit is set to complete and it's ready to go. Let's go ahead and look back at this permit again. Let's go to the Workflow tab, and let's see that now due dates have been calculated. So for each of these administrative workflow steps, the due date's been calculated. If I come over here, I can see that it's been assigned to the appropriate organizations, that the due dates have been calculated appropriately, and that that the requirement for approval is noted on each one of these. So what we have now is we have a permit that the planners, the engineers, the fires, and the building department can now go work on. Well, that's kind of interesting. How do they know what they need to work on? So here's this permit number. This is 13030. So if I went to the user list of the, let's say, the planning department, I can go to the users list. I can now pick out the planning department. And I can see now that the planning department has a SFR 2013-030 pending approval process that needs to get accomplished. And its due date is 7/18. Well, the planning department also has some other ones here, and you can see that they've gone red on them. These things need to get accomplished as well. And they might look at this SMART priority as well and decide, well, you know what, this is 60% complete. This particular permit right here is 60% complete. I can come and actually work on this one, whereas this one is just, it's not due yet, and so on and so forth. So I can plan my workload associated to my user to-do list. And if I wanted to, let's say, accomplish this planning action, I would just click on this. It would then show me my task list to prepare a 90-day request, applicant 90-day resubmittal. I can actually decide, okay, I'm going to go ahead and approve this. It'll put today's date in it. I would then save that, and I could mark all of my, forgot to mark all of my tasks complete, and when I go ahead and save that, I'm going to go ahead and ignore that, save that. It falls off of my list, and now I don't have that work to do again. So let's go back in to our dashboard. Let's go ahead and go back to that 30 permit again. And let's look at the workflow in the review process to see that now this planning approval has been completed. So we have that completed. And if we went and looked at our SMART queue on this, what we're going to see is that 30 now is 25% complete. And we can see which ones are ready to issue, which ones are complete, and the percentage of complete that they are. So going back to our permit, let's go ahead and go to that again. And let's look at a couple of other ones in our dashboard. Guess I've got to. Let's look at this one that is complete, and let's see what status it's in. So it's been in the process 49 days. It's complete, but there's only 2 of 4 that have been completed. Let's go back and let's look at this issued one. So in the issued one, we've actually got 152 days of processing. They were in review 33 days, and the clock was stopped for 119. And if we came and looked at our notes, what we would see is that we had sent out a deficiency report, that they had to identify some problems, and that the deficiency report was sent out. So let's go ahead and take a look at the deficiency report that was sent out on this. We can see that there are some pending problems to this. And then let's look at the cycle process, and we can see that the first cycle went from 0126 to 226, and then we received a response on 626, and then we processed it within a day and actually issued the permit. So we have a lot of information on this particular permit where we're able to go in and take a look at how things are actually getting accomplished. So I've talked a little bit about cycling and workflow and submittals. I don't want to take up too much of your time. We have these additional SMARTGov modules that I kind of introduced a little bit that kind of let you know how much percentage complete these are, ones that are not been issued. The cycle list tells us which ones are ready to send deficiency reports and which ones are ready, waiting for response and those types of things. So we have a lot of tools that are allowing us to take a look at that. But one of the other real dynamic things that we do in permitting is we provide a public portal where somebody can log in and create an account and then manage their permitting processes from outside the organization. And what was really dynamic about this is that this becomes a portal for your applicants to actually come in and take a look at some of the information that you've got going on here. So now that I've logged in, I can kind of look at, I've got 30 permits, I've got inspections, I can pay them online, I can apply for permits. I can also look at today's inspection schedule. I could run reports, and I think Tracy indicated that once a month she runs a bunch of reports, and she could register those reports here and then actually have people come run them themselves right from the public portal. The other thing that they can do, you can do from the public portal, is you can, publish a lot of documents out here on the public portal, like the Town of Florence, inspection applicability and rights and regulations. This is one Tracy gave us to take a look at, or the regulatory Bill of Rights that we registered and kind of published out here for people to take a look at. So that's pretty nice that you can do that kind of stuff. But I think really one of the most exciting things is to be able to track your individual permits as to where they are in the life cycle. They're technically complete, or is it going through plan approvals and all approvals are done? Let's go take a look at this one, for example. We can see that, the contacts, the contractor, the parcels, here are the submittal requirements, and I could actually upload them from the portal as I wanted to. I can look at and see that each of the planning and engineering departments, when they've completed it and when it's, I can see the process of the review cycle. I can see how much I owe for the permit, and then I can get ready later on and look at my inspections. And eventually, once this permit gets issued, I could also schedule inspections on this as well. So if I went back, if I went down here and I looked at one of my issued permits, I could come into this one, and I could come down here and I could actually request inspections from the process, from the portal as well. So I think this is another best practice, is to provide your applicants with a way of self-service and moving forward with that. So John, I think that's about where I need to end up.
Okay.
I can entertain any questions that may come up if you want to, but
okay, I think we've got a couple, and I think Serenity's got those. But as we're getting into them, hey Tracy, we were talking the other day, and you're in process of configuring this portal as we speak. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Actually, we just went live this morning with this, and
yay!
One of my building inspectors, we've been going in trying to break it this way. We love it. We've had a lot of fun on it this morning. So yeah, it's
great,
a lot
great.
of information that we need to have out there, and it gives people easy access.
Yeah, and you were, I think specifically you were uploading some documents there as well as other things too.
Right. So they have to be posted, of course, on our website. But I thought it was much simpler to put them on here because it's all, relating to permitting. So it was very simple to upload a bunch of documents. That way everything's there. It's very easy to find. There's still more that has to be put on there, but.
No, that's great because as you were telling me, part of this legislation does require various disclaimers or notices or whatever, and so that's a great way to do that. So, and how easy was it for you to configure it?
Oh it was simple. It took a matter of minutes.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear.
Easy attaching a document to an email. I mean, it's very simple.
Right. No, that's wonderful. Serenity, we have a question or two, I think.
Yeah, actually we have quite a few questions today. The first one, somebody's wondering about the requirements of HB 2443, the amendment that's going to be in effect in September of 2013 this year, and is just wanting to clarify that the amendment is going to be excluding all residential permitting from the permit processing time requirements of SB 1598. And I can just answer that real quick. That's what my research has indicated to me. Also, a couple of building officials in Arizona have verified that as well. I would suggest talking to your town or county attorney there to get some more clarification. And we had also mentioned a couple of lawyers earlier that you could reach out to get more clarification on that.
Yeah, that's great.
And we do have another question out there. Is there a report in the software that can show the processing times of permits, and also can it be based off the type of project that it was?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, you know, there was only so much time, so we didn't show a lot of the reporting capability. But there's a number of built-in reports in SMARTGov that can handle most of the typical type of reports that you need to do. But in addition, there's also an ad hoc report writer. And what that gives you the ability to do is to create any type of tabular report that you might need. You know, I like to say if you can dream it up, you can pretty much build it in this tool. And so you'll be able to have reports based off of project type or permit type, or based off of submittal date, or really a ton of things such as that. So that's a great question.
Great. And there's also another question about the processing clock and how that works, and also how it can be configured.
Yeah, and the processing clock, you know, kind of helps you track how many days have gone by, you know, since an applicant has submitted all of their, you know, documents, submittals, and so on, and then how much time you, the jurisdiction, have taken in reviewing all of their items. And that processing clock, a couple of things. It is specific to each jurisdiction. So on a jurisdiction level, you can configure that clock in a way that's unique to you. You know, a jurisdiction down the road might have a different time requirement than you, and yours can be totally different. Secondly, though, is that processing clock also can be different based on permit type. So you could have a type of permit that has one time limit or requirement built into it, and yet another one that it's quite different. And so that's totally configurable on your side. And for that matter, you might change what your time limitations are, you know, based on a law or something adopted by council or what have you. And you can always go in and update that configuration as you need to. So it's very configurable, and you absolutely have the ability to work with that and change it.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. I have a couple other questions regarding the online public portal. One of the requirements of SB 1598 is to publish a list of permit processing times and make them available to the public. Where is that area available to them?
Yeah, so in fact, Bob, I think you showed that just briefly. There is an uploadable documents area on the public portal, which you can upload to that document area an application form for a permit or a fee schedule or anything that you might need to, certainly including requirements for this particular law, if you want to upload those there. It's a great place for it. You know, and there might be some other places too. Really, on the login screen of the public portal, there's also a place where you, on the jurisdiction level, can put some notes in there and some informational type things. So there's a couple places you can do that, but certainly on that document area is probably what I would suggest.
Great. And I had one more question on the portal. Somebody had noticed the area that was called public notices. Could you clarify that area for us?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that question. There's really a lot that is built into the public portal, and for those of you that noticed the public portal or public notice feature, what that really is designed for if you're doing some type of a project that requires notifying surrounding property owners, or any type of situation where you're wanting to notify a group of property owners. The idea there is that you would send out a postcard notification in the mail, which would contain either a permit number or some kind of a key, a numeric key, which then the person would go on, after they get that postcard, they would go on to the public portal, they would log into the public notice area, and then from there they would type in that key, that access code, and it would take them to that project, which would have all the information about that project. It would have all of the public notice documents that pertain to that project. And so it's really, again, it's an automated way to help, to help you serve your constituents and your citizens as you're informing them about a variety of things such as that. And with that, I'll just kind of move us towards a close here. Appreciate very much everyone's involvement on this particular presentation today, but really just to state what we're trying to accomplish here at Paladin, specifically with our SMARTGov product, is we're really trying to provide a tool to help folks like yourself automate, for one, automate your existing processes, followed by then being able to comply with regulations as they come through, such as these bills that we're referring to, and even thirdly, to get ahead of the curve, when various changes come into play, that you've got automation tools that are capable of managing those as you move forward. And all of that, from what we're trying to accomplish, in a budget-friendly environment, and we like to call that the SMARTGov advantage. And so that's really what our objective is to resource local governments with technology, with best practices, and so on to make that type of thing happen. And with that in mind, I'm just going to move to the final slide here and talk just briefly about some of the upcoming things that we have. One is we'll be featuring our public portal in greater detail. Well, we're really going to show all that it's capable of doing. And I think that's important because the public portal, as it's built, our public portal, is an extension of your front counter. So what I mean by that is you can extend your front counter services to a 24/7 self-help environment so that your citizens can be informed of various permits and projects that are taking place, or an applicant could make application via that public portal. They can even pay fees through that public portal. They could submit digital documents through that public portal. They can even view a map, and on that map they can see all the permits in a certain area on a map. And so again, resourcing you so that you're able to resource your citizens in a powerful and dynamic way. And so I'll just point you to that. We don't have that date scheduled yet, but I'm very excited to roll that out in the next couple of weeks. Actually, I think it's the second week in July, Serenity, is what we're targeting for that particular webinar. And so anyway, stay tuned for that. The other thing that I will mention is that a lot of the functionality that Bob shared earlier, we captured that in a white paper that talks about the cycling functionality that's in our product here. We'd love to get that into your hands and talk with you about any additional questions you might have. So please give us a call. Again, I'm John Bird, my colleague Serenity Lombard. You can call either of us. You certainly could email us as well. We'd love to get this white paper into your hands or answer any other questions you might have. So thanks very much for your time today, and have a great day.